Hello, this is National Chess Master Rots to continue my video series on the at chess.com on the correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This one was played on board 168. Our man is abshores, and we have a low 1600 versus high 1400 rating advantage. This game should have gone to white, and we'll look at some of the mistakes they made. White just didn't find a winning tactic. Okay, e3's kind of passive. It shuts the bishop in, but you know it's perfect. It's a perfectly playable move. We'll see where both sides start going wrong here in a little bit. Black is playing similar to the King's Indian attack I use as white, very similar, and he basically uses a very similar setup to what I've done. And often I already have this bishop out. I've got two lines where I keep it back and I bring it out. Now, Black's next move, I don't use it so much. I found from experience that it weakens this b6 square. Now, the purpose of this move is to anchor a knight on c5. But it's often when I do put the knight on c5, I bring him back to e6 pretty quickly. And I don't really keep him on c5. So it does weaken b6. Okay, so now Black moves the pawn on b6. Normally not a move I play unless I keep it back. I will, using this system when I don't develop the bishop as white, I'll bring the bishop out, bring the rook into play, and then bring the bishop back, and they'll just come into the game later. Anyway, White immediately constructs his own weakness. He gives up the b4 square. I don't think that was the best choice. Now Black's willing to play with double pawns. He'll get access to the b file, but White doesn't want any part of that. And this has been kind of coming for a while. I haven't talked about it yet. Let's look at the pluses and minuses of this move. The plus is, well, White's trying to get a kingside attack going. Isn't that what we want to do? If we can attack the king. Most of White's pieces are developed. It seems like a logical thing to do. But positionally, there's one drawback with it. You're going to get an isolated e-pawn. That may or may not be a bad thing. We don't know yet. But you're going to get it. Also, if Black takes. Also, at the same time, this opens up a diagonal for the dark squared bishop for Black. So I think Black handles it fine. He attacks the queen. And here, at some point, Black should be really thinking about taking this pawn off the board. And he doesn't. I think White misses a strong move here. I think at this point, White should just push by f5. And the reason for doing this is actually, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, it stops Black from taking here and activating his bishop, okay? That's the first main reason. The next reason is, hey, you're trying to tackle on the king side, right? This is the way to do it. You're going to have to advance some pawns if you want to soften Black up. And the other reason is this starts creating threats against this bishop. Suddenly, Black has to deal with the prospect of losing that piece. This might force Black to actually have to take on this square, but it's getting kind of shaky here. If White decides to take with the pawn, White has a threat here, h3 and g4, and Black might have a problem here. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and prove if White missed a win of a piece, but these are moves that are logical and make sense, and the kind of moves you should be considering when you're playing a game. Okay. Also, if you do take on this square, once again, you're activating your bishop. You want to look for moves that activate your pieces. You also clear the e5 square. This suddenly becomes an outpost. It'll be very simple for Black to get a knight to that square. Knight d7, knight e5, or the other knight to d7 and e5. Then you've got a knight on a nice square that can't be driven out by a pawn. You've got backup protection to the pawn on f7. So White just missed a good move here. He played queen g3, and now Black gets wise and gets his bishop out of danger, and with tempo. And now White goes ahead and plays f5, so he's done it a move late. And black goes ahead and grabs here. Now it's kind of anybody's ball game right now. It has achieved the objective I had outlined for him, but there's a big difference. It's cost him a pawn, and the light squared bishop has come off the board. So, like I say, it's anybody's game here. Black's only advantage is he's a pawn up, but white does have his attack going. But he got it at an expensive price. He lost the pawn. So they just kind of go through a little bit of motion here. Black starts bringing some defenders over. White needs to open up the board if he's going to get anywhere, right? And drives the bishop back. And now an interesting idea. Now here it seems to me obvious that, well, maybe not obvious, but it seems at least black or white is thinking. A lot of us might not consider a move where we put a knight on pre like that, but it so happens that if black takes, he just immediately loses his piece back. So we can assume that white looked this far, and now maybe f4 just to attack the bishop. But maybe white can get something going here, sacrifice some stuff, or well, no, he can't. The bishop's on that square. But after white saves his bishop, there's a knight loose there. This is kind of tricky. There's a lot of stuff loose here. But bishop d2, g3 is coming, opening up some more lines. It's anybody's ball game here. It's a very interesting position. Let's take a look. How long was that knight? No. What am I thinking? I'm thinking this queen can take it. There's a pawn in the way. He'd get new glasses. Okay, so. But obviously white's thinking a little bit here, and black declines, so he can also logically say that black took a look at that position and decided against it. And I think it's still anybody's game here. White's got the attack, that's for sure. And black's sending defenders over in front of his king. And, the pawns are disappearing. But here comes the critical blunder on both sides. We have a double blunder here. Black needs to save his knight, so he puts it on a square where it's protected. But as I was saying, white should have won this game. You might want to pause the video and try to solve it. Okay, you've resumed the video. It's just a simple tactic and to win the piece. I guess queen c4 is one way, but just what's wrong with bishop takes? That just seems to win a piece. Because as soon as black recaptures, here comes queen c4 check. Rules say you got to get a check, and I think you don't really want to put the rook there. The knight will take it, and this pawn is pinned, so you park the king in the corner, and white takes this, and white's won a rook. Okay, white's a whole rook ahead. Game over. Okay, so white missed that. So we want to analyze active moves, threats, captures, and checks, and white didn't do that. White tried something else. White brought his knight into play, and that doesn't work. Black gets his knight to a better square, and white's still trying to attack, but black starts sending defenders, getting defenders in place, and he's no longer down a rook as he would have been in the other line. So, you could still say it's anybody's game, but white has to commit one more mistake, and it's coming, and here it is. e4, a discovered attack, attacking the bishop and uncovering an attack on the rook. So white must lose material. And after all, white's down a rook just as it is. Now the black king is very exposed, but white's running out of material, and even though he's got a queen and two bishops with an open board, they just don't have enough activity to put black in any danger here. White would love to have a bishop checking on e6. That seems to win because the king goes to f8 and you get pinned, but white just doesn't have enough going. So he might have played bishop f5 with that idea, but he put it on e4, and now it's just a mop-up for black. There's really not much more. Black's getting pieces off the board, and white will get a few checks, but he'll run out of them, and he's just down a rook. And there's really nothing he can do, and the game is essentially over. And then white misses the mate threat, and bang, here you have it. So white has himself to blame for this one. Let's flip the board, reload the other game. What move will it start it out at? How about move 1 where it's supposed to? Nope. Move 15. It's totally random what move it's going to start out. This, too, was a fairly even game, and white chooses to play the King's Indian attack against Sicilian. It's one of the systems I've recommended. If you play e4, you can avoid black's preparation of the Sicilian and play King's Indian attack. Normally I don't play h3, but this is okay. It does weaken h3 a little bit. And here, white plays a little differently than I do. I put the queen on c2, but he put it on d2. His goal is to trade off the dark squared bishop. And really what white's done is gotten rid of black's bad piece for him, because black went ahead and blocked in with e5. So maybe white could have considered keeping his bishop on the board. But anyway, he traded. But I think the game is still basically even. It's going to stay that way for a while. Black just makes a surprising move here in a little bit. Not yet. Which just is totally unfounded. Now this opened up the f file, takes d5 and f5 from white. It's anybody's game. And they both do a little maneuvering around. Now black's trying to open up the board. He's hoping to attack white, and I guess you could say white's hoping to attack black. So white swings the rook over to that file before black does. Black gets his king out, gets ready to oppose the file, and white runs his king away from the danger. Now, was that maybe black should have just played rook h8? I don't quite understand king g6. White didn't have another attacker for g5, but this is what he did. And we're almost to the point where, we're now at the point where black just throws the game away. It's anybody's game here. There's so many logical moves to play, I suppose. Well, let's see. White has got 3 attackers on that. Play the knight to f6. That should work. But instead, black sacrificed on g3, and the thing is, he just doesn't get anything for it. Here he's traded off a rook and a knight, gone down a piece, and essentially has nothing. Absolutely nothing here. And the game just winds down. There's really nothing to it. Black's obliging white by trading off, and usually if you're down a piece, don't advance your pawns. Keep them back. Make the other side crack you, because black's going to advance them and they become targets. And you're trying to draw. Don't make targets in your position. Now they tell you to trade off pawns, and if you're down a piece, but you have to be careful about doing it too. I'm not saying black can blockade this, but make white forces way in. We'll come back and talk about that in a little bit, because black is very obliging here. Although it's kind of working, white is running out of pawns. But you see, there's one problem in black's position. It's his pawn on b5. White can double attack that, and black can't defend it. He can't get his king over in time. See, white's threatening to play knight here and knight here, followed by moving his king and bishop here. Can black save it? Maybe he can. Let's see. Let's start running the king now. Okay. Now let's put the knight here. Maybe he can save it. Let's see. Knight here. Well, now you got to guard it. So I was wrong. How's this knight going to guard it? He can't get the king over there directly. Let's see. The knight's got to get to c7 or a7. How does he get to... It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough for black. Why isn't it moving forward? How does he get the knight to a7? By way of c6. So, one... Let's see, try this move. We're just going to make it. Okay. Now we got the knight to defend it. But here comes the bishop, and black can't get his king over in time. So this is one of the drawbacks with black advancing his pawns. So let's see. Try to find the exact move we're at among the nested variations. Let's see, played knight there, and then is this the, no, this is not the variation. That's one thing I hate about the way chess.com's analysis board works. You know, you have the main line, then when you look at a variation, it suddenly makes the variation the main line, replaces it. That shouldn't happen. So the only way to get rid of that, I've found the quickest way, is to reset the board and reload it. Then I've got a complete PGN without any bias. And now we're ready to go, and I can find the right line. See? And White's not playing to win that pawn as easy as it was, but Black keeps weakening his pawns. Here he just gives a pawn away. So, and the b5 pawn still remains weak. White's not eager to attack it. But Black's going to play into a little trick here in a second. You'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. He gives up another pawn. But he's getting pawns off the board. But here's the trick he plays into. He allows White to force a stalemating of his knight. And bishop d5 is the pattern you want to recognize. Now, no matter where that knight moves, White's going to trade into a winning king and pawn ending ahead of piece. Okay, so Black moves it now, and the rest is mop-up time. So now, objectively, I was saying, you're down a piece, you should lose. Let's go try to find the point where Black started advancing his pawns. Right here, Black played b6. Okay, Black shouldn't be able to hold this position. Okay, he's a piece down, but White has to break through. Now, for the moment, let's look at something we call entry squares. Entry squares is a place your king can penetrate. Okay, the White king can penetrate into this position, but that's something Black can defend. White doesn't have any other entry points for his king, so White's going to have to create them. This king could be a useful defender on the queen side, but it comes at a price of weakening this pawn. White can attack that pawn in two moves. So in a way, Black's kind of stuck to having to guard that pawn. His king can serve a role in keeping the White king out. So White's going to have to win the game on the queen side. How does he do that? Well, he's going to let him be the one to advance the pawns. Okay, now all Black needs to do. Wait, it's Black's move here. Black played b5. Or b6. He shouldn't have moved it at all. Let's wiggle waggle the king. Okay, it's not a great defense, but it's a defense. Okay, that's all Black's going to do is wiggle waggle his king. However, White can get the king to g4. And then start menacing g5. So this knight's going to have to come out and help at some point if White tries that plan. What I was trying to say is White's going to have to eventually advance some pawns and exchange some pawns and try to create an entry point. Let's try to find it. I'll just wiggle waggle the king. This is one way to start your analysis. Now, I said don't push your pawns, but maybe you need to here. Because if you don't, you end up with an exchange, and you do get some weak pawns. Okay, how are you going to take back? Let's take back with the a pawn. And wiggle waggle with the king a little bit more. Now let's see. White wants to get d4 in. Let's wiggle waggle. Now, are you ready for d4? Yes, you are, because your knight covers the squares. But let's not move pawns. Let's wiggle waggle. Okay. Now we'll take with the knight. Now, question is, how is White making progress? Black's getting pieces off, or pawns off the board here. But you see the big difference? Black doesn't have really any direct weaknesses, any new weaknesses in his game. White does have an entry place for his king by way of a4, but that's something that can probably be defended for a while. I think in the long run, Black is still doomed, but this defense is a little better than the defense that Black played, and that's the difference. These are the things that separate a really strong player from your average player that's capable of beating a strong player. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that statement? Okay. A strong player is generally anyone over we're going to be generous here, anyone over 2100. If you're over 2100, you've probably beaten masters before. Okay, you're not good enough to be a master, but you're good enough to give them a fair fight. Okay, and of course all the way up to grandmaster. They'll solve this position in an instant. Now, everything I've showed you is not forced, obviously, right? But Black has been able to get pawns off the board without weakening his own position, and he's going to force White to beat him. And notice in this variation, and again it's not forced, suddenly the Black Knight has a nice square. It can't be evicted by a pawn. Yeah, White can oppose with a knight and Black dare not take, but White hasn't demonstrated his win. Now, coming back to what I was saying, if you're above 1800, you're strong enough to beat a master if he makes a mistake. In other words, he makes a slip, he gets a bad game, and suddenly you have this position on him. But you still haven't won it yet. Okay? You're capable of winning this as White, but you still haven't won it yet. And this is what the stronger player will do. He'll defend in this style. And if White isn't careful, he's going to have all his pawns traded off. Now, objectively, if White can reach an ending where he has a pawn ahead, he can force Black to give up his knight for that last pawn and then mate with the bishop and knight. But you see, White hasn't won his pawn yet. White still has work to do. This is problematic. So although the masters say if you're behind a piece, trade pawns, not pieces, don't be in a hurry to trade them if the position calls for it. Just sit there and make your opponent beat you, because Black advancing his pawns created weaknesses, and White was able to exploit them all. And that's the difference, because if you're playing a stronger player, he will play this defense against you. If you're playing a weaker player, chances are he won't find this defense, as we saw in the game we played. But then you just realize the advantage of being a piece ahead. But White still has to work here, and he does have some targets. The knight can go to d4. He can transfer the bishop to h3 and try to tie Black down to defending both e6 and g5 with his king. I mean, I'm not saying White can't win this. White should win this. But guess what? White has to work. And I can promise you that if I had this position against a grandmaster, I'm going to have to work hard just to win it. I'll have to play it accurately, because if I don't, something's going to go wrong. And chess in a way is unfair. You can have a winning game, but the path to victory is a long way off. So you get this by experience, okay? And it's shortcut. If you watch my videos, I mean, all these little tricks and things, they're spread throughout all my videos. You watch, I promise you, if you watched all, what I have, 400 public videos up, if you were to watch all 400, one a day for just over a year, play in competitive events frequently so that you get competition against better players, there's no reason, even if you're an adult, that you can't gain 200 points on top of your rating. And then what does that tell you when you gain 200 points on top of your rating? What does my video lesson 1 say? It says if you raise your rating, you start getting better pairings. Or not better pairings, you start getting stronger pairings. I guess you could say those are better if you want to play stronger players. But guess what's happening when you're playing stronger players? Not only are you stronger, but you're getting more experience. So, I maintain the belief that you can raise your rating up if you eliminate your blunders and learn to think like a master does. That's what my videos do. Okay? So why pay for instruction? It's a good way. It'll shortcut it, but why pay for instruction when you can get all the training with me here for nothing? Okay? Watch them. Tell other people to watch them. We got a message here. And I thank you so much for your time. Take care.